Hi there. I'm your host, Britt, and I'm so grateful you've discovered the Loving Your Own Soul podcast. Together, we will embark on a mindful exploration to living a more fluid life through a deeper connection to the soul. My intention is to provide expansion and inspiration so that you can embody the highest expression of your true potential while creating more beauty in the ever-changing world around us. I hope you've arrived here with an open mind and an eager heart to receive all that resonates while leaving behind everything else. If you're feeling ready, let's get into it. Today's conversation is coming to you in a bit of a different format in that I was recently interviewed on my good friend Shannon Keating's podcast, Unmasked Open Hearted, where she hosted me for an unforgettable conversation about my recent journey through pregnancy and motherhood. I was so moved by this conversation, as many others were too, that I wanted to also host it on this Loving Your Own Soul podcast channel, simply for the reason of being able to include it in a variety of conversations centered around my conscious journey through pregnancy and now into motherhood. And of course, mostly for the purpose for those of you who are new here or wanting to specifically tune in to all the pregnancy and motherhood content, you'll now have a range to listen to, all in a relative order of one another. Plus, if you're familiar with human design, myself as a generator, I thrive when having things to respond to. And Shannon is such a great host. I just feel that a lot of genuine and powerful dialogue came through on this one. And it was important to me to share just in this way too, because I also find it fun for you to hear me in the lens of being interviewed. Now, if you are looking for a new show to tune into or aren't familiar with my girl Shannon, I highly recommend going to check out Unmasked Open Hearted when you get done here. Shannon is not only an incredible podcast host, hosting conversations about self-love and self-growth for women, she is really advocating for empowering women to love, trust, and be their fully expressed selves. And super cool, Shannon is I would say making waves in the personal development world through supporting the livelihoods of young girls, teenagers, and young women in their early 20s. She even recently birthed her own passion and purpose-driven baby, as I'll call it, which is her organization called Babes Rising. Babes Rising is a community for young women to love themselves, support one another, follow their hearts, and just have a fun with life. Babes Rising is on a mission to empower, support, and inspire young women into radical self-love, heart-centered sisterhood, and the courage to trust in their own intuition. My opinion, Shannon is changing the game for young girls with this community that she has built. And whether you are a young woman yourself or a mom to females, I really recommend checking out Babes Rising for their membership platform, coaching containers, online resources. They have so many things going on. And I know for me personally, this community would have been huge for me to have had earlier in life, and is also one that I look forward to sharing with my daughter Sage and her friends or any future siblings one day too. You can learn more with the links in the show notes or by checking out at Babes Rising on Instagram. And to go ahead and get a snapshot of Shannon herself, learn more about her interview style, let's go ahead and just jump into this very special conversation that holds such a dear place in my heart.
But what's extra special about Britt coming back on the podcast is that since Britt was on the podcast over a year ago, she has given birth to her first child. She gave birth to a baby girl last August, so August 2022. So she is a brand new mother, and Britt is just so knowledgeable about self-care and self-love and spirituality. And she's woven all of her knowledge and her intention into her journey into motherhood, her pregnancy journey, I guess it's not called conception, Britt. What is it called? Your birth journey, conception too. Yeah. the whole journey. And she's going to share the behind the scenes with everyone, which I'm really excited to dive into. But just in case you don't know about Britt, I'm going to read her bio out loud, share her astrology and her human design, and then we'll flow into the conversation. Britt is a certified holistic health, wellness, and life coach on a mission to motivate and inspire you to enhance your life, recognize your true potential, and embody your best self. Utilizing the concept of bio-individuality as her guiding principle, you will frequently find Britt bringing high achievers, potentially like yourself, back home to their real selves. Britt's unique approach combines integrative wellness, mindset work, earth wisdoms, and spiritual teachings to reconnect you to your intuition and the unique path of possibilities inside of your life. Britt believes that you too can rediscover your authenticity and live in a state of balance in our modern world. Astrologically, Britt's sun is in Aries, her moon is in Sagittarius, and her rising sign is Cancer. And then human design wise, Britt actually has a very unique human design profile. She is a 4-1, which is the rarest profile you could be out of all of the 12 profiles, which is very, very special. And she's a generator with sacral authority. So she has that gut in the moment, strong intuition. Let's open it back up. How you doing?
Yay. Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm doing really well. I have to be transparent. I'm actually a little bit nervous. I'm super excited, but definitely have some nerves, being that this is my first podcast appearance, we'll call it, being back since becoming a mother this last August. So it's kind of like, I don't know, brushing off the cobwebs a little bit, but it feels really aligned just to be here with you and kind of doing it this way.
Yeah, I think that's so understandable too, because you went from podcasting regularly, I feel like being interviewed regularly, showing up so big all the time, retreats, everything, to then really honoring pulling back, I know, intentionally during the pregnancy journey. I know you went through a lot emotionally during that journey too, a lot of healing work you did. And then to giving birth and really taking that space, which is something I definitely want to dive more into. We can even start with this because a lot of women, I don't feel, do this. I don't think it's something that's very common in our modern society where you actually really pull back and you spend the first 40 plus days with your partner, with the new baby, just pulling back from social media, not engaging so much with the outside world, just really having this beautiful, safe, loving space in your home setting. And then even for you, just integrating back and really easing back into starting to use social media again, connecting with the outside world, doing things like this podcast interview. It's been just a slow, intentional journey. So can you pull back and just share more about how you navigated those decisions for people and exactly what you did? Because I feel it was a beautiful way to take care of yourself, a beautiful way to honor this transition into motherhood.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, just a little bit of my, where I've been. I definitely believe that just in life in general, a lot of us have different opportunities we really kind of live like multiple lifetimes in this lifetime. And that old hustler mentality, individual that I used to be, it really does feel like a lifetime ago now. And just, I'm so grateful for where I sit right now as a mother, feeling so grounded in just everything and where I am right now. And that was really one of my biggest intentions upon just stepping into motherhood and bringing this new, absolutely incredible being into our family, into this world. It was really, really important to me that we had plenty of just time and space to be able to really integrate into one another. I used to move at a really fast pace. Some of that still does serve me really well in that now at time, I have a whole new conception, understanding of time being a mom, as I'm sure many other mothers do. Like, it is incredible what you can actually get done in a 30-minute window when 30 minutes is all you have sometimes. For me, when stepping into the role of a mother and bringing in this little beautiful being into this world, I really wanted to take it slow, and I wanted to try to go slower than I had ever gone before because this is a huge, huge transition. I mean, it truly changes your life. It might sound cliche. Those listening may have heard other people talk about this before. And it really is something that you can't understand. I never understood it until you actually go through it and you're like catapulted into this new chapter of your life. It's different than anything you've ever done before. I actually felt it's funny because I did so much preparation leading up to Sage is the name of my daughter, by the way, leading up to Sage coming into the world. And I thought I was super prepared to give birth to her, which giving birth, and we can go into it if you feel called, is a whole journey in and of itself that definitely make all the preparations that you want if that feels good to you. If you're someone that you don't like to prepare, then honestly, don't waste your time preparing because what happens in birth is nothing that you can quote unquote actually prepare for, I'll say. However, I becoming a mom, it really kind of like knocked me off my feet, and it knocked me off my feet in a setting where I had already planned to be really intentional and to really take care of myself. And I'm so grateful that whether that was my intuition speaking to me or my higher self or whatever message was coming through that I needed to open up this time for myself, I'm so deeply thankful that I did, because had I not done that, I would definitely be sitting in a very different place right now. And where I'm sitting right now, for those listening who don't know, I'm actually currently going through some very serious ebbs and flows of postpartum depression and anxiety. It has been really rocky the last couple months. So we're recording this in March of 2023. My mental and emotional health really started taking a toll around 3.5 to 4 months, around mid-November to early December, of my daughter being here with us. Those first 3 months leading up to that were really, it was like this sanctuary of love. So I completely shut down my business. I put a hold on my business, I should say. I didn't shut it down. I took a pause. I actually took a pause a month leading up to my daughter's due date, so that way I could spend time with myself, because I had heard how much motherhood, you don't have any time for yourself, quote unquote, is what people say. I would now actually argue that, because we all have a choice and you can create time for yourself. I mean, I really believe that like you have to show up for yourself first. Like you have to fill yourself up first in order to show up for the rest of the world, and just to show up in your life. Actually, forget about even showing up for others, just to show up in your own life, right? You have to fill yourself up first. And becoming a mom, that has become even more apparent, of just the need to fill myself up first, so that way I can then show up for my daughter, for my family, all things involved. So I took off, basically paused my business the whole month before Sage coming into this world. And then my intention as an entrepreneur, this is why I set out to have my own business, so that I could have this luxury. And we set our family up this way of saying, if I want my maternity leave to be 2 months, 3 months, I just wanted it to be open-ended. I didn't want there to be any pressure on myself to have to show up and come back at a certain point in time, because this is my first time stepping into my role as a mother. I didn't know what this was going to be like. It breaks my heart for women in society who do not have that privilege and have to go back to work at a few weeks in or a few months after. Like, that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But this journey, it's life-changing, and it changes your world for the better. And it also brings up a lot in the process. So you go through, there is a physical recovery that has to take place. And then there is this new emotional and mental recovery and journey that is unlike anything. There's also a whole nother spiritual journey and a spiritual recovery and everything that needs to take place within that. And then on top of it, you're now responsible for another human being. And your partnership takes a toll, and your household is changed. And I mean, everything changes. Like, it's just so wild. Yeah. So basically you made mention of, the first 40 days postpartum, the first 40 days. And I cannot remember the specific detail behind that, but it does take it's 42 days specifically. It's about 6 weeks that it takes for you. There's a portion of the body that needs to finish recovering, and it does take that full 6 weeks. So some traditional midwives and things will say, leading up to that 6 weeks, for the first 2 weeks, that you do want to spend your first 5 days in the bed, the next 5 days on the bed, and the next 5 days around the bed. So that's 15 days right there. And all you're doing is lying in bed, on bed, or around the bed with your new baby. You're giving your body the time to heal and recover. You're giving yourself and your baby the space to integrate together. Your baby was inside of you for 10 months and has suddenly also, like, think about what that would be like. You've been in this warm, Shannon, I know you've spoken how much you loved the womb as a baby. Like, you're in this beautiful, and maybe you can speak better to this beautiful, just warm, flowy, watery bubble of love. Everything's taken care of. And then more or less, you're like catapulted out into this stark world. Our world's awesome, but it's also kind of crazy too. And you need time to like integrate and figure yourself out and figure out life outside of your mom, and just to then still be with your mom. And gosh, there's like so much to this topic that I could talk about. So if I'm rambling, feel free to stop me anytime.
No, it's beautiful. I love hearing about it. I just want to emphasize, just for women to know, okay, it takes 42 days for your body to recover from giving birth. And like you just said, I can speak to loving the womb. Lots of memories of just loving that womb space. But you described it beautifully. It's like you are cozy, connected to your mother. You're in this space. And then now all of a sudden you're out into the human world, and it's jarring for the baby. It's a lot for the mother, and just recognizing and honoring that. I think I'm really glad you're speaking to this in this episode. So women who maybe you want to give birth one day, or maybe you're pregnant right now, you just have that knowledge and education. Because I know for you, Britt, you had to advocate for yourself essentially a lot, just in researching on your own, reading books, understanding, okay, this is what's happening with my body. Even when you went into the hospital, making sure it was set up in the way you wanted it to be set up, doing all these things to advocate for yourself with your knowledge. And I think if more women understand, okay, it takes you a solid 42 days after you give birth for your body to begin one layer of the recovery journey, because I know there's many of them, but to recover in this one big way, recognizing, okay, you don't have to jump back into things. You don't have to, quote unquote, get your baby body back. You don't have to jump back into work. All of these things we put pressure on ourselves around. I think just talking about this in an episode, you actually being an example of a woman who chose to do this for herself and to rebel against the societal norms, and just more women speaking about it and knowing, oh, you have a choice here and this is what's happening, is really important. And I just love to speak, just to what did you do? Because there's a lot that you did. We want to kind of like break it up into chunks, because you had some things that happened before you gave birth. I don't know if you actually spoke about this in our last episode, but you had a miscarriage. And that was one layer of things where you had a miscarriage. There was a whole healing process for you in that. Then to become pregnant again. Then in the pregnancy, I know, and I want you to speak to this too, I'm just kind of like recapping it for people, but you had a lot of healing you had to do of moving through the fears around the miscarriage, getting through different milestones of your pregnancy, having your own deep emotions come up to be healed during your pregnancy. That's something we don't talk about a lot as a new mother, bringing in such a conscious, evolved little babe. There was things that you had to heal within your emotional self, within, your inner child healing, and all sorts of things that you had to heal during the pregnancy to resolve those aspects of yourself before becoming a mother. And then you had a couple unknowns happen in the whole process of, okay, now I'm giving birth and it's not going to be the way that I prepared for, where you wanted it to more be at the birthing center and just have a lot of different aspects to it. Okay, now you have to go into a hospital, which wasn't your ideal, and you might have to be induced, which also wasn't your ideal, but you went through that and navigated that, to then the postpartum of, okay, now I actually have a human and I'm learning how to navigate mother Britt. And we're taking this time off. But then I know there's also a part of you that's like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a creative, I want to go serve the world and I want to get back out there, but I know I need to rest. And now also just, I know you have a babysitter right now caring for Sage, but just navigating, okay, how can I fill myself up? How can I navigate my new relationship with Dan? He's a dad, I'm a mom, we're navigating this. We're raising a daughter. How do we want to raise her? How do I fill myself up? Just so much in this journey that I know it's a constant evolution and you're constantly just learning and figuring it out. But I'd love if we want to dive into just you sharing your experiences and just the knowledge you acquired, what happened in each of those phases, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Feels really good. And I mean, you just hit it right there too, of like how layered and how multidimensional bringing a child into the world is. Like, it hits on so many different levels. And I really do feel too that it's such a beautiful depiction of the true masculine and feminine. I had to really, and have had to, am as well in present tense, stepping into my divine femininity. And Dan, my partner, who's my husband, he's really stepping into his divine masculinity as well, in that I'm taking on a very feminine role of being at home and caring for our child and really opening myself up to receiving in a whole different way and then also giving in a whole different way. And same for Dan, like he's in a very masculine role right now of being the one who's financially providing for our family, which has also been a hard, very, very hard experience for me to allow myself to be in as well. To be honest, like I never would have thought that I would have actually ever been in a position where my husband is the one who is financially responsible for us right now. And that was a hard pill to swallow. And there's just so much to it. But I do think there is, just wanted to speak to the beauty of the way the masculine and the feminine energies can work together. In this role, of course, obviously for us, we're a male and female is the way that looks, but that can look, regardless of how you identify, it's more an energetic thing when we're talking about just the balance of the masculine and feminine there. Should I start? I know you said we'll kind of like break this down in chunks. Should we start at the beginning and kind of like work our way to where we are right now?
Yeah, I would love that. Maybe let's start with, okay, the miscarriage, the healing from the miscarriage into feeling ready to become pregnant again, just that leg of it. Because I also know, and you experienced this too, when you had your miscarriage, so many women have miscarriages and it's not something that's so spoken about, but it's something that's so, so, so common. Yes. So if you want to just share as much as you want to share about that leg of your journey.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's the thing that still kind of pisses me off is like miscarriages they are so common and it's so unfortunate, and yet they're not spoken about. And it's the same way I feel about walking through the postpartum period as well, as like the reality of what is taking place through that time period is also not spoken about. And yet it needs to be, like, so much of this just needs to be opened up and unearthed, so that way we can just not feel like we're so alone and the only ones, quote unquote, struggling or walking through a difficult time are. With my miscarriage, so when we got pregnant for the first time, it was in the late winter, early spring of 2021. And there's so many different forms of miscarrying. First and foremost, I miscarried in the event that when we went in for our 12-week heartbeat test to check the heartbeat, we were going to get to hear the heartbeat for the very first time. I was also very healthy. I am very healthy on a physical level. So there were no red flags. I was a very low risk pregnancy. Some women will get ultrasounds at a much earlier time and place in their pregnancy. There was no reason to do that. Ultrasounds are also not the most healthy for mom and baby. You want to do as less as possible there. It's a lot. It's terrifying for the baby what that's actually like. But anyway, we went in thinking that we were going to have a healthy heartbeat, that we were going to hear a heartbeat, and we did not. I had no idea. I was newly pregnant. I was new to all of this. So they basically, long story short, they then sent us in to go get an ultrasound after that, because sometimes the baby can be in a funky position. Long story short, we were at 11 or 12 weeks. I found out that we had actually lost the baby about 4 weeks prior to that due to the measurements. So I had no idea that this was going to be a possibility in my journey. B, I was then hit with the fact that I consider myself very in tune with my body, very intuitive. I had no idea that I was, quote unquote, carrying a dead fetus, my dead unborn first child, in my body for an extreme long amount of time. Like 3 or 4 weeks is a really, really long time. So that just hit me. It hit us in every direction. I opted, when one does go through a miscarriage, ours was considered a missed miscarriage, is the way that they termed it medically. You can have the option where you basically can take the abortion pill, is what it is, to help the body in emptying and discreting of the fetus and your uterus, like everything that needs to take place. You can have a medical procedure, which is called a DNC, or you can opt to wait for the body to discard of everything naturally and on its own. Waiting to do it natural can be a little bit dangerous, so to say. There's a lot that has to take place physically. It's also emotionally wearing because you don't know how long it's going to take the body to do so. I opted to go through the process naturally for my own emotional health and grieving journey. It did not feel right to me to just using the first two options to let go of this child and this being in those manners. I wanted it to happen naturally. So I did move through my body. The whole process took basically about another month to actually rid of everything. And it is similar, not as similar as I thought it was going to be to giving birth, but the body actually does have to go through having uterine contractions and releasing the lining and everything else inside the body. So it is actually really, really painful. I think I spent about a solid week and a half maybe on the couch, and you are having contractions, not to the level of an actual 40-week or so
Yeah.
child coming out of you, but it is not similar to period cramps at any means. It's kind of right there in the middle. So we went through that, and then it did take me another good 5 to 6 months, I would say, to heal from that. It was a lot. There was a lot of just transmutation of energy that had to take place. Dan and I, my partner, we had to come back together as a couple. There was a little bit of miscongruency there between the two of us, and it brought us actually closer together, but we did have to go through our own journey together through that. And then just to be able to be ready and to be comfortable and to feel safe again, possibly knowing that now this is a big risk and this is something that could possibly happen again to us, and not knowing, will we be able to fully have a full term, completely healthy pregnancy and be able to see it through.
Yeah.
Was really, really big. I definitely worked. I won't share the details on them just because I always want to be conscious of anyone possibly not copying, but there were certain supplements and herbs and different regimes and things that I followed that were individual and specific for my body and what I needed.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to share the detail on those just because we're all so unique. And I've fallen into the pattern before of just hearing certain things shared and then just taking them on myself, and that wasn't right for my body. So I definitely recommend working, if anyone is, whether you're trying to get pregnant or going through a loss or even are healing postpartum, or even just want to get your body actually ready for pregnancy from a nutritional storage place. It actually takes you should start taking prenatals from a vitamin aspect 3 to 4 months ahead of trying to conceive. I'm actually still taking a pre and postnatal now, and I'm 7 months postpartum. I actually don't know that I probably won't stop until we're completely done with having children, just because now after having a child, it can take years actually to get your full nutritional stores back. And there's just so much that goes into preparing the body. I mean, the body goes through so much. But yeah, it was a big healing journey. There was a lot of emotional and spiritual layers that had to take place. I now definitely connect in the spiritual realm with that lost child. And Sage is our first physically born child here for sure, but there is still an element that I do feel that there is that other soul who is still around by all means. So,
oh, that's so beautiful. I'm glad you spoke to that. Just the awareness that you did do a lot nutritionally and supplementally to nourish your body, to get your body healed first and foremost, and then prepared to have a healthy pregnancy. Secondly, but yeah, just the awareness that we all are so individualized. And so it's important to really tune in, be mindful, maybe do your research, maybe work with somebody to support you in that process. And then the awareness that there is a lot we can do nutritionally to support our bodies. And then you also mentioning the emotional healing and then the spiritual connection probably also being really healing for you too. And just knowing you can connect to that baby and the spirit of that baby in that way, I feel like can be really comforting for individuals who maybe had a miscarriage, of knowing it doesn't mean it's just you can never connect. It's the same way as, you know, if someone passes away, we can actually still have a deep spiritual connection to their soul, their essence, that individual. So I love that you spoke to that. Can you talk about once you got pregnant, which is really cool because didn't you kind of sort of found out when we were together, kind of sort of not really, but kind of. I feel like we had like an intuition a little bit because we did a breath work together. And then like a week or two later, you found out that you were actually pregnant again.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. And it's not advised to do breath work while pregnant. Obviously, then I was only like 2 weeks along. So
yeah, really early.
Completely fine. And it was a somatic breath work. So it was an intense one. Yeah. So we were actually leaving to go to Puerto Rico at that time. And when I found out that I actually was pregnant, I was not expecting to be pregnant. So my partner and we basically just kind of like leading up to getting pregnant and actually conceiving, we had really just kind of said, we were like, let's just go have fun. This has been a really intense year. It was October of 2021. And we were like, let's just like make this a really fun month. We connected. I mean, we had so much fun when I look back at that month. So of course, Sage's soul looking down on us was like, well, this is a life I want to come into. Like, these guys are having a blast. They're traveling. They're really present and really connected together as a couple. We had gone camping to a music and arts festival. We were headed to go spend a month and a half down in Puerto Rico. I had my first retreat coming up that I was going to be hosting, and life was just feeling really good. I was feeling really connected. I had all these new friendships that were all developing from all over the place. It was just, looking back at it, I was feeling so much love and connection. Course, you know, these spirit babies who are floating around, who are watching us, not to put any pressure on us, of course, but naturally so. Now knowing Sage and her personality, I'm like, of course she was ready to come in. Because I'm always aware of my cycle, so I can't say that I'm never not tracking my cycle, but I wasn't looking at it day by day. I probably had a rough timing of when I thought I was ovulating, but we weren't doing anything specific. We weren't trying to get pregnant. So when I did find out I was pregnant, I was super surprised. I also was a little bit nervous before too, of like, can I even get pregnant again? There was a lot just going on from the health standpoint in our world at that time too. There was a lot of fear, a lot of stress collectively taking place. And my period was late, which my period is never late. I am very, very timely in that aspect. I actually feel really blessed for that. And I had asked you because our cycles were synced up. And I was like, hey, did you get your period yet? And I don't remember what your response was, but you had an intuitive knowing before I even knew I was pregnant. And it ran through you, right? That you were like, I think she's pregnant.
Yeah. I was like, oh, Britt's pregnant right away. Yeah. I was like, oh, she's pregnant. And then I obviously don't want to say anything. I'm like, I'm not the one to tell her. She needs to find out on her own. Don't tell her.
Which is so funny. And what's also really cool, I find it cool, is that we found out we were pregnant the same week of when our original due date was from the child that we lost. So it was a rough week knowing that date, right? Like it's coming no matter what. I probably will always just know that timing of life in the middle of November when that child could have been born. But instead, we found out that we were pregnant with Sage. And then that took me down a whole journey in and of itself, because talk about then getting riddled with fear, right? I knew the rough timing from measurements of when I likely lost that first child. I then knew I had these certain milestones and markers that I wanted to get to. We were also traveling before. So we were in Costa Rica the first time. Now this time we're in Puerto Rico. It's early. I was just riddled with fear and wanting to control. And in Puerto Rico, I started looking up different doctors and seeing like what options I had down there to get. I think I took like 9 or 10 different pregnancy tests. Like every single day, I was like, I just need to make sure that like I'm still pregnant. I'm still pregnant. I'm still pregnant. Which is only normal, right? Totally normal for this human experience, until it came over me that I was like, you know what? You need to just surrender, take a breath. You're in a beautiful location. You also happen to be in the location where you got married to Dan physically. You're about to run your first retreat. This, just because of what happened earlier in the year, doesn't mean that that has to happen again. Like you can choose, we were talking about choices earlier. You can choose to do this differently. You can choose to allow this to be differently. You can trust. You can be so held by, we all want to be held by our mothers, right? Like in that instance, being held by Mother Earth, like tuning in and grounding myself into the elements and everything that were around me, and to trust and know that it can be different. And I wasn't about to go repeat the exact same experience we had just had earlier that year. But it was really, really, really hard. So it goes back to having those spiritual practices and rituals and things that you can connect with to come back home to yourself with at times when, the energy it doesn't feel grounded. It feels very scattered or very turbulent. And then to be able to come, just come home and like plant your feet on the ground or sit on the ground and figure out a way to feel held is just, it's so nourishing. So I did that, but I still had different timelines that I wanted to meet. We got home at that point when we did return back to the States, back to Florida where we were living. I think I was right at about the 11-week mark or so. And I was scheduled for another heartbeat test with the same group of midwives. I was really nervous for that, of course, right? I didn't get to hear the heartbeat the first time. And of course, the thoughts are all going through my head. And we went in to hear the heartbeat. We did get to hear the heartbeat, thank goodness. However, what had taken place before getting to hear that heartbeat was when we got home, I was really adamant before about wanting an early ultrasound. Now, I know I said at the beginning, right? Like you want to have the least amount of ultrasounds possible because it's not good for you and the baby. Well, there was still that human element of me that was like, I just need to know that there's a healthy baby inside of me. Then in going back to one of my favorite books ever as it pertains to childbirth, it is, I think it's just called The Guide to Childbirth, but it's by Ina May Gaskin. She's a traditional midwife. She's amazing. Yeah, I think it's Ina May's Guide to Childbirth is the title of it. Highly recommend everyone reads it. Even if you're not planning on getting pregnant anytime soon, it teaches you so much about just being a woman and how powerful it is. And it's so cool what we do and what our bodies are capable of. Basically, through rereading that book again, I then came to my own understanding that I was like, you know what? Again, I can surrender back. I don't need to get this early ultrasound. Everything's going to be fine. We'll just wait for the heartbeat test next week. Well, Sage, who has a funny personality, that next day after I had surrendered it, I ended up spotting when I used the bathroom. And of course, having been through a miscarriage, our whole day was rocked. We got in that day, ended up having the early ultrasound where we saw a healthy baby. Everything was fine. And sure enough, literally within like the time of getting the ultrasound and then going and using the bathroom again afterwards, no more spotting. I feel deep down in my soul that was her way of just wanting to say hi and wanting to just let us know that like, I'm here. I want you to see me. Everything is totally good. You guys can relax. We pretty much did relax from that point forward. We had, like I said, there's so many different milestones in pregnancy. It's so easy to get into your head because it's like then, the risk of miscarriage drops by, I think it's like 70% or something once you hit the 20-week mark. So,
okay.
And it was like, I want to hit the 20-week mark. Before that, because I didn't know it yet, I was having a girl. I was extremely sick as well. So I was super nauseous, all these migraines. I mean, I had so many days that I just could not get out of bed. I was living off of spirulina tablets and gluten-free pretzels. Spirulina for the point of trying to get nutrition in my body. Gluten-free pretzels were the only thing I could stomach. It was the holidays, so we got to share the news with our family, our immediate family and friends around the holidays, which was so special. But we also had travel involved, and that was just like, sometimes I felt like I was holding on for dear life during those points. Later on through labor and delivery, I learned what it really felt like to be holding on for dear life. And we made it through the pregnancy. But then once I got through, just to kind of like shorten up the timeline here, when I moved from the first trimester into the second trimester brought all different swings and hormones. I had me feeling like I was back on hormonal birth control.
Right.
And I continue to use that analogy because that's how I've felt ever since. I've never felt so out of whack as I had when I was on hormonal birth control through a large portion of my later teens, through most of my 20s. And being pregnant again, it was like that, where it was like I suddenly felt like I had no control. Self-regulating became extremely difficult. I was in those swing patterns, and it was just a roller coaster. I had little bits of, I would say, maybe some like a little bit of like depressive inclinations then, nothing to the event of what later hit me, which also just shows how like we're not in control. Again, like I kind of made note of this earlier, like you can prepare, you cannot prepare. At the end of the day, you're still just going to have to ride and like keep things fluid throughout this whole journey, which it's also kind of the paradox of life, right? It just like, your whole life really just gets summed up into like a 10, 18-month time span through all of this. But yeah, so I had all those swing patterns. I went into the third trimester. We ended up moving out of the blue, out of state. My husband suddenly got this incredible job opportunity that we were not planning for. So we ended up moving when I was about 8 months pregnant. So then I had to completely change up my whole birth plan. I didn't know how difficult it would actually then be to find care when you're that far along in pregnancy. And there's actually a lot of providers who will not take new clients after you've hit 34 or 36 weeks of pregnancy because it's too risky for them, which I was confused about that. And I learned that at the end of the day, you can still go check yourself into an ER if you're in labor and like the hospital has to admit you. So there is that. Yeah, good to know, right? Because I was panicking. I was like, well, this baby's coming no matter what, whether I'm having her on my bathroom floor or I'm actually having a team of medical there with me. And then I had to decide. My original birth plan was to be in a birth center with midwives. Again, I wanted it to be intentional and ritualistic. So I really had to surrender again. Like there's so many initiations in this whole journey that just continue popping up. And I did surrender. I did find an incredible birth team that I ended up actually liking even more than my original team in Florida. So that was a beautiful gift. I ended up having Sage in a hospital setting, which I really had to surrender to, but I'm actually so grateful that I did because it gave me another lesson in trusting my body and trusting myself and self-advocating and getting to use my voice in a really clear and grounded and like powerful way. My goal, of course, if you haven't picked up on this by now, was to have a natural and an unmedicated birth. Sage was really comfortable inside of me. She was not moving. We made it past our due date. We made it a few days after that. We made it a week after that. They say, so there's two things to this. A, technically a baby is never not going to leave the body, right? Like you've never actually heard of that, of like someone of like a baby just never being birthed. Like the baby is gonna come out. The body's gonna release the baby at some point.
Mm-hmm.
There are different risks that take place because of course the baby continues growing. So there is like the pelvis, while we can stretch and move, it is only so big. And depending upon how big the baby is inside of you, you don't want the baby possibly getting stuck. The baby starts also, the fluid start because the baby's growing and growing and growing. There's no more space for the fluid, and the baby needs the fluid to be alive inside the belly. So there are a couple associated risks that do start coming into, I would say, awareness as you reach past that 40-week mark. What happened for me was I did end up getting induced. It was by choice. It ended up being by choice. I actually had a strange mouth pain that took a place.
Right.
And,
I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. 10 days leading up, it started in kind of felt like a tooth pain in the right side of me. And then it ended up going on through my whole jaw, my mouth, down my neck. Turns out what everyone thinks, no one's really been able to figure out what it was. They think that Sage was actually pressing on a nerve that was sending all of this. So weird. And then we also believe that like these babies, these souls, they always have a plan, right? Like they know when they want to be born. They know what they want their astrology to be, what their human design to be, their life path number. Like the soul is coming in here with a mission for a purpose. Everything's calculated and everything makes sense. So there's this side of me that's in excruciating pain that I'm like, I can't have anything done for the pain because I'm pregnant. At the same time, I kept feeling if I can just get this baby out, the pain can go away, or I can at least like maybe go to the dentist. Like I was really convinced at the beginning. I was like, did I suddenly just get like a whole mouth of cavities overnight? Like, is that possible? Like what is happening? But you can't get x-rays when you're pregnant and everything like that. I didn't want to take any pain relievers because I was pregnant. I didn't want anything to harm Sage's little teeny tiny liver at that standpoint that has like 100+ years to live healthily on this earth with. And I'm then also trying to trust that like, okay, the baby knows when the baby wants to come in. She's going to come. And she just wasn't moving. But this is where I also believe that the babies are choosing us as their mothers, and they're choosing us and us in the decisions that we choose to make for them. So everything's always divinely guided and divinely planned, in my opinion. And I did end up going to get induced. We did try every single natural remedy to try to get labor going before then. I actually feel that labor, because I was suddenly then having contractions, had already started when we went to go get induced. And that really kind of skyrocketed everything. The birth journey was a little bit wild. But I did end up having Sage vaginally. I did have her natural, obviously getting induced. There's a medication involved, but it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I got to trust in my body. I got to really listen to myself. I got to also not like that old hustle mentality. I got to also really continue ditching that hustle mentality and like, because it would have been so easy for me to say, no, I was set on having an unmedicated natural birth. I'm going to be strong-willed and that is what I'm going to have. Right. But like, I had to be open to the plan changing.
Yeah.
And that taught me so much in and of itself. And I ended up being so grateful that I did have every medical option around me, because who knows what birth can entail. Like it can be scary. I believe it's a very natural process, but there's also a lot that can take place just with who we are. And it's so individual. And like we set the room up beautifully. We had low lighting and candles, and we did the same thing at our home, like all the salt rock lamps, and really kind of just trying to like mimic that comfy womb space that Sage was in. It's also really healthy for our own nervous systems as well. Low lighting and having the right music and affirmations. And we really just tried to make everything as beautiful as possible. And I feel like we really succeeded at that.
Yeah, you definitely did. Oh my goodness, such a journey.
Such a journey.
Such a journey, Britt. I'm so grateful that you've gotten to just share all of this. I know we still have some time to speak about now that you're a mother, but just to go over all of that you just shared again, there is just so much that you went through. And it's so cool because I feel like I was with you behind the scenes for it too. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when your hormones were all crazy in that last trimester. Oh, I remember how you felt in Puerto Rico before that. Oh yeah, I remember, and when you were saying, okay, now I'm going to maybe potentially be induced. I remember voice noting you. And do you remember this? I remember exactly where I was. I was walking around this field and I go, Britt, just so you know, I think this might maybe help you out. I was induced.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. But yes, I do remember that upon you saying that.
I was like, by the way, I was an induced baby and I'm just fine. And you were like, oh, actually, that really helps me to know that you were induced. Okay, I think I can do this.
Because you said you were like, I was so comfortable in there.
Yes. Yeah.
I really didn't want to come out and you needed a little push. And I actually firmly feel that with Sage too. Like she was really, really comfortable. I mean, she's still, it's like we're still also more or less one. I think it takes about 9 months after birth for you and the baby. It's like our auras are still constantly connected. We're feeling so much of one another. And that was really helpful. I forgot that you said that. But yeah, that was because it's like, oh, right. Because, you don't want to. It's so difficult when you're trying to make a decision for yourself and your own well-being and safety. But now you're also making a decision on behalf of this other being. You are their decision maker. And I'm doing that right now that she is here physically earthside.
Yeah.
I have to trust so hard in myself and my decisions and trust that I am making the best decision I can for her. And then we're just going to roll with whatever the outcome is. Like, I do firmly believe that we can heal from anything. We can always course correct. Sure, some things, you might have to get creative with, or maybe that, path to the left might have been a little bit easier. You chose the right one. It's going to be a little harder. But at the end of the day, we always get to where we're going.
Yes.
But it's really tough. And I think it's really hard nowadays because we have so much information. Myself, like you, we've done so much personal development and self-discovery, and we're so aware of our past and our childhood and our traumas, whether that's big T or small t, our relationships with our parents. We know so much. And now to be raising someone, it's like, whoa, how do I not royally mess you up? Right.
Yeah.
But I have to trust again in those, soul contracts, if you will, that Sage chose me as her mother. So therefore she also chose the decisions and the choices that I would be making on behalf of us, such as getting induced.
Yeah, most definitely. And just a small piece into human design, because I know we're both passionate about it. And I've shared some things about Sage's human design with you. But even that aspect, I think it's so funny because Sage and I both have that channel of sensitivity and then the open spleen. I'm like, of course, both of us wanted to stay in our mother's womb space. We feel so safe and cozy and connected to her in that space. But then also, because I've shared some things about that channel of sensitivity with you and you just being a very intentional, conscious mother as you are. And as both you and Dan are, just like, okay, so how can I love her? What would have you wanted if you were a kid and your parents could have known you had this prior? Because for anyone listening, it's a channel from the emotional center to the root center. And it just makes somebody a especially sensitive individual in all meanings of the word. I mean, emotionally sensitive, physically sensitive, just very deep sensitivity to foods and smells and environments and feelings and things just really impact somebody when they have this sensitivity, but it also makes them equally sensitive to the emotional needs of others and to the animal kingdom and to like healing capabilities and sensing people's needs. So it's a really beautiful energy and Sage has it. But even to your point of like her choosing you, I remember you being like, well, is there anything? And I'm sharing all these things with you in a voice note and I'm thinking, Britt, I think she chose wisely because you already are going to do all of these things for her. And there is that reassurance of, oh yeah, I've kind of prepared to have a child who's just like this, who's wired in a sensitive way because of how you live your life, your lifestyle, even just how you're planning on parenting her with very little to no technology and a lot of connection time and presence and getting out into nature and just everything that you do. So it is beautiful for anyone also listening, potential mothers or new mothers. The souls do choose you and you can trust in that. And just those worries around, like you mentioned, oh my gosh, am I going to F this baby up? Am I going to give this baby the patterns that I got from my parents? But I think a lot of us, especially just conscious women, are always thinking about, okay, well, I felt my needs were unmet in this way, or I got traumatized in this way, or I hated this about my childhood. I want to make sure I don't pass that on to my children. You're still going to pass some things on because they're still here to learn. And maybe you won't pass on what you got because you're so intentional and you've progressed and you've healed. Maybe you will pass a little bit of it on, but I think it is that deep trust in, as long as you keep doing the best you can and you're intentional and you're showing up, the soul chose you for the lessons it wanted to learn. So can you just share a little bit about just how have you navigated maybe that mindset, Britt, and just mindset in general and just life changes in general? I mean, identity shifts in, okay, now you're a mother and you're still Britt, yet you're also Britt with Sage deeply connected to you. I mean, you just mentioned your auras are connected. You're a mother. You're never going to go back to not being a mother now. So do you want to just share as much as you want about just the identity shift into motherhood, maybe some of the mindset work, maybe some of the emotional healing work that you've done since giving birth and now having a tangible baby in the world with you?
Yeah, totally. I will say the first piece on mindset, just to kind of wrap up what we were just speaking to there of, am I going to F this baby up? One of the things that came to me in a moment of awareness is that for anyone listening, so that way we're not putting, too much pressure on ourselves or anything like that, is that our babies want us to be present with them. Sage doesn't want me to feel like to be standoffish towards her because I'm worried about saying the wrong thing to her. She doesn't want me to not be engaged with her because I'm worried about doing the wrong thing to her. She wants me to be present and she wants me to be there with her. So, because there's a point, right, where we can just overthink and overanalyze and basically drive ourselves crazy, but then we also drive ourselves out of the present moment. And children teach us presence, just like I believe animals do and nature does, and all these beautiful resources around us. But like children are so present and they're so simple. Like if Sage has a need, which at this point is really, she needs to sleep, she needs to eat, she needs a diaper change. We'll say just like those three for right now, to keep it super simple. And she cries and I figure out, okay, is it sleep? Okay, no, she's still crying because she's like, you didn't meet my need. So then I go to the next one. Is she hungry? Oh, okay, she's hungry. She doesn't sit there and be like, oh, my mom is trying to tend to me. I don't want to sleep, but it's going to be easier for her if I just sleep. So therefore, I'm just going to like throw my unmet need to the side and choose sleep and like please her. No, she's like, I'm still hungry. I need you to feed me. So she's going to keep crying. And I feel like that's just such a lesson for us in our adult world, because how often are we changing up our need to possibly meet the needs of others, right? Shannon, you and I are out and we're shopping and I'm hungry and I want to eat. And you're like, oh no, I'm not hungry yet. I was hoping we could grab lunch in an hour. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So then I just sit there starving, quote unquote, for the next hour because I didn't want to mess things up and not eat because you weren't hungry yet. Right. Whereas a baby is like, no, I'm hungry. I need you to feed me right now. And like, there's no overthinking it. Like, it's so simple. And I just feel like that right there and it's in and of itself is such a lesson for us, right? Of like, keep it simple. And it can be that simple. Like it totally can be that simple. And it's just, putting yourself first so that you can then better show up in life and like everyone else benefits. Cause like if I'm starving myself for the last hour waiting for you to get hungry, we're not then having an enjoyable experience together. I'm not present with you. I'm probably not tapped into my intuition. You, because we're all energy, right? You can sense
Mhm.
that something's off with me. So it's like, just communicate our needs together. So that's one thing. So I digress from that though. With becoming a mother, oh gosh, there's like so much to this.
Mhm.
Like our needs are simple, like I just said. Presence is key. Presence is power. Not overthinking
Mm.
things and just being present. Babies as well, like they're really seeking safety, love, and connection. And when I'm looking at those three, so I'm an entrepreneur, I work from home.
Mhm.
Sage is a baby. She is definitely like a highly engaged baby. She is a super old soul. I actually feel that her soul is probably older than mine, would be my guess, which is amazing. Like, I cannot
Wow.
wait. Yeah, I fully feel that. Dan feels that too. We are actually talking about that the other day on a family walk. And I
Wow.
cannot wait to learn from her as well. She's
Wow.
already come in and she's taught us so much. And I know that there's going to be so much that I'm going to be able to learn from her that I cannot wait. And it's going to test me as well. It's already tested me. There's
Mm.
already been a lot that I've had to grow through, we'll say, in this scenario. But when we're looking at, who I was before her coming into this world, how I envision myself as a mother, how I then actually am as a mother, there's a lot to that. As an
Mm.
entrepreneur and as somebody who works from home, I have the choice where I could attempt to go back to work, right?
Mhm.
Sage is on her playmat. I could very easily have my laptop right next to us. And there's nothing wrong with this if this is what anyone is doing. This is just
Mhm.
my choice and what makes sense for me. I could be trying to work and trying to play with her. I could keep a cell phone on me and trying to check emails while I'm breastfeeding her. I could be posting on social media while I'm breastfeeding her. I could be doing
Mhm.
all these different things. She can be napping on me. And then I can have my hands out doing something else on my phone. We can multitask. I have been the multitasker of all multitaskers in the past. And
Mm.
who I am as a mother now and where I am with Sage and my beliefs and like our family value system, that energy doesn't match that. What does make sense for me right now is to be fully with Sage and fully connected with Sage. Because what I'm modeling to Sage is that when you need me, I'm there for you. And I feel like I'm going to get like emotional right now. I never want her to be looking to me, needing something from me, and my head is in a cell phone or a computer because my work that I do in this world is to serve other people. That work is meaningless if I'm not serving my own daughter who's right there with me. And that has been a choice that has been really, really hard for me to make because I love my work and I love that side of me. And I know that that side of me, it hasn't gone anywhere and it's not going anywhere. But like my priority right now is being a mom and serving my children in the ways that they need to be served and the ways that like I believe they deserve. And for her, like, right now, she's not gonna look at me and be like, "Oh, that's cool. Look at my mom making her own money and being a female entrepreneur and serving the world and doing all these cool things." No, all she would then see from me is my mom is distracted from me. My mom doesn't see me. What I'm doing in the world that has purpose and that has a certain time and a season, and I cannot wait for all of that. Where I am right now is my time is with Sage. And that is what is so important. And like, we're never going to get these years back. Like, she is changing so fast right now. I mean, it's wild. She changes day by day, hour by hour, week by week. Like, people always say children change so quickly. And I never understood that until right now. And that's not to say that some days are really, really long. I'd be
Mm.
lying if I didn't say that there are many days where I'm counting down the next hour and a half to when I get to put her to bed and I get to fully check out and be me again, or when it is time for a nap.
Mm.
I love that. I have my open emotional center. Like, I need alone time more than anyone. And I have
Mhm.
been so tested not being able to get that alone time right now. Like, that has been really, really difficult. So I just want to put that out there. The days are really long. And the time I have with her right now is really, really short. And when I have my next
Mm.
baby, I'm going to have Sage, the toddler, or whatever age she is, to also deal with too, right? I'm never going to have one baby.
Yeah.
And I know that what I'm doing is what this baby wants from me. And my next baby
Mm.
might be completely different. This is an
Yeah.
intuitive gut instinct that this is Sage needs me 100% right now. I've gotten myself to a place in life where I can give her 100% of me. And I don't know when I've done things in the past that I've been able to actually give 100% of me because I wasn't completely whole and I wasn't completely filled up. So,
Mm.
like, yeah, it's really, really difficult as a mom to start making decisions that are affecting both of you, right? Because, like, there's just, I don't know, there's just so much to it, and, like, I'm still in process of mourning and grieving who I was before a mom,
Mm.
really releasing her and being able to step into, or not even step into because I am there, but just being able to, like, embrace this current season and this current role.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and for
Yeah.
just expressing and releasing some emotion too. That was really powerful, Britt. Like really, really powerful. And just you are a powerful example of somebody who is navigating this new motherhood. And yeah, you used to be able to devote so much of your day to your self care and your work, and then your relationship with Dan and taking care of the dogs. And now just tuning so deeply into your intuition, knowing this is how I need to show up for Sage. And I'm not going to be checking my phone or, Instagram storying my breastfeeding moment and just giving a little wisdom to the other mothers out there as I breastfeed, which a lot of women do, which isn't wrong, right? It's like you all have to
Exactly.
navigate, each mother navigates with her intuition, but just to be really clear in how you're meant to navigate is very powerful. And I think very inspiring and empowering to a lot of women, including myself, and just even saying, okay, this is what Sage needs, and we'll see what the next child needs, but being able to do that. And can you just share before we wrap up? Because I know you've only got a few more minutes here because you've got to go back to Sage, speaking of. But before we wrap up, I just love if you can speak just a touch to, because you mentioned it at the beginning around just it being really important to fill yourself up
Mm.
and then be able to show up for her. And you kind of mentioned it again. And I think that is a huge challenge for so many women in general and mothers, new mothers, mothers in general. Okay, no, I need to fill my cup up, but what do I even do, or how do I even do that? And I know it is like you mentioned, and we're both passionate about. It's individualized. What's going to fill you up is going to be unique to you versus another woman. So just with putting that out there, can you just share specifically how have you navigated that? What are you doing? Just maybe as some inspiration for some other women out there. What are you doing regularly to fill yourself up right now, to navigate that at this point in time? And again, that could look different in 3 months and 3 years, et cetera. But what have you figured right now? Okay, this fills me up. This is what I can do for myself. Even just, okay, I'm hiring a babysitter so I can have some time alone, or Dan's going to watch her for 30 minutes so I can do this, or while she's sleeping, I do X, Y, and Z, or I make sure to get my lemon water in the morning, or whatever it is. Because I know there are many, many different intentional ways you do this. So what does that look like if you want to just walk us behind the scenes a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So my number one daily non-negotiable is warm lemon water in the morning. I have it every single morning. I have to. I mean, I crave it. Like, I feel like a dehydrated, like, I don't know, like I've been stuck in the desert if I don't have it first thing. So whether I'm making it for myself or if Dan's making it for me, I have that every single morning. My goal is to always get up before Sage is something that I've learned. I have to ground myself down. I need to check in with myself, check in with my nervous system. I really do this through the act of meditation or journaling, usually both, sometimes one or the other, depending. So, warm lemon water, meditating or journaling, honing in on my wins and my gratitude list for what am I feeling grateful for, whether in that moment, just in that life, what were my wins from yesterday? Because in motherhood, and kind of life in general too, right? Like I've done this before. It's so easy to focus on the losses or focus on what we could do better or what isn't working, what we don't have, all these things, right? I've really tried to bring it back home to what are the wins? What am I doing a really good job at right now? Where am I? And make it simple, right? Sage slept for 4 hours consecutively. That's a huge win, right? Or whatever it looks like. Maybe she slept through the night. I don't even want to use that language because there's so much pressure on baby's sleep. That could be like a whole episode in and of itself. And then I really have to check in with my nervous system. So, having a baby when you have someone who is waking up multiple times throughout a night, possibly someone who is possibly crying all the time, someone who possibly is just crying and you have no idea, there's nothing you can do for them, right? You've done everything for them. You're like, I've done everything. I feel helpless. Sometimes they just need to cry in your arms. That can also really dysregulate your nervous system. I mentioned my need for alone time. That has been really dysregulating. If I find any, and this is kind of then like throughout the day, if I find myself getting agitated or getting frustrated, or sometimes Sage's cries get inside me and I just need to like scream. Well, I'm not going to sit there and scream with my baby. If you need to do that, do it, right? Like the baby chose you. Sage would have no idea why I'm doing that.
Uh-huh.
She's uncomfortable. Her being uncomfortable doesn't do any, I don't never want her to think that like she's in trouble for being uncomfortable, right? Because then we start to disassociate from ourselves and our own needs and stuff. But what I will do is when I then get a moment later on, and sometimes now that she's a little bit older, I can actually do it with her. I will put a song on and I will dance and I will shake. We have a rebounder, one of the little mini trampolines, so I can jump on that, which is really helpful. But like dancing and shaking in a song, right? Most songs are like 3 minutes long. 3 minutes, that's so easy. I know everyone listening has access to music, most likely. And you probably have 3 minutes in your day, especially if 10 of those minutes have been spent scrolling Insta, to go dance. Dancing right now is probably like my biggest tool. And then getting outside, usually with Sage, again, moving my body is key here. Getting outside, feeling the fresh air, feeling the sunshine, going for a walk. I mean, just moving from being in a building and we're in a house or whatever it is to being outside is like a total refresher, total game changer. So those are just they're super simple, right? They're not hard. Connecting to my breath too, taking a deep breath. Sometimes breathing deep doesn't work. Again, that's where more of that active like dance and movement really needs to come in. So.
Thank you for sharing all of those.
Yes. Oh, and just one more thing too. I have stayed caffeine free. I've continued to be caffeine free, even now not being pregnant. I have also continued to not drink. That has been really, really important for me. And then as much as possible, filling my body with nourishing whole foods, because if you're breastfeeding, breastfeeding hunger is anything I've never been hungry in my life before breastfeeding. I'm hungry all the time. All the time. It's crazy. And then also being intentional with like, again, how do I open my heart more if motherhood is really stressing me out? I found cacao and, we can say like dark chocolate, the cocoa bean, cacao in particular for me. Cacao has been really beneficial of having chocolate. I've also had all these sweet cravings that I've never had before in my life. So intuitively, I know there's some hormonal imbalance taking place right now, which is perfect. When I feel ready, I can go to figure that out. No pressure to do it right now. But then also being open and flexible to like, I might have days where I've only had boxed gluten-free mac and cheese with that fake cheese that who knows what is in it. That's what I'm eating because this is a season and I don't have a lot of time to spend in the kitchen right now. And that's okay. So I'm being intentional with my food choices, but I'm not putting pressure on myself to eat and create and spend time in the kitchen like I used to, because that's just not my reality right now. And I trust in my body that it's okay. So again,
Yes.
releasing pressure off yourself wherever possible is key.
Yeah.
And I do not pressure myself if Sage is up in the middle of the night for her to go back down by herself in her bed or her bassinet alone. I bring her into bed with us because I need to sleep. This is all so temporary. I already have nights where I like miss her if she's not sleeping with us and she's being independent and sleeping alone in her crib, which is amazing. Again, I need that alone time. But at the end of the day, like I do what works for me. And that has been so key to really navigating this. Anytime I find myself dipping into those really low lows of depression, it's because I've been putting pressure on myself and not listening to my gut to take it back to human design. As a generator, as a sacral generator, I know that I am being the best mother when I'm listening to my gut because my gut is my authority. Is that right?
Yes.
What do I call that? Yeah. Yeah. Like that is my ultimate authority figure right now.
Oh, so much, Britt. And even for obviously mothers, new mothers, the tangible, short and sweet things that you can do, the taking the pressure off, the mindset shifts, but honestly, any human, like that's all really helpful for me too.
Yeah, right. Like these messages, they're so pair with life.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I just wanted to echo too, before we dive into the final 8 questions that you can answer, I did want to just echo, it's funny because you mentioned earlier, I just want to just make sure we emphasize it because it was such an important point around when we first went into motherhood. And you mentioned just the awareness of what Sage needs is your presence and the importance of keeping things simple too around, okay, she needs this, she needs this, she needs this. Okay, can we be present? Just keeping it simple. But the presence thing is something that I've been thinking about so much, and that we do put so much pressure on ourselves around, okay, everyone wants to be seen and heard and loved. And what are your love languages? I mean, you know me, I'm always like thinking about all these little things about people. When in doubt, as a rule of thumb, we just need presence. Like if you can genuinely be present with an individual in front of you or with whoever you're with, that is going to heal so many things. It's going to create so much more connection. It's going to help address absolutely everything or just about everything. So I think when in doubt, even as a new mother, like you mentioned with Sage, but just as friends and partners and teachers, coaches, children, all these roles that we play, be present with people, give people your presence when you're connecting with them, whether it's somebody at the grocery store, whether it's somebody serving you at a restaurant, whether it's a friend of yours, just presence. I think if we just drop into that can go so, so far and help people feel all the things they want to feel and help us feel connected in that way. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it's been something that I've been thinking about a lot, almost as like, this is the answer to all of our relational issues. Presence.
Oh my gosh. It is the answer. Yes. Yeah. I think there's a book out there called like Presence is Key or something, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Sure.
Maybe that's a book I'll write one day. Yeah. But it is. It's like it's the root of it.
It is. It really is. Okay. So I know again, you have to go. So let's just get through these final 8 questions. And I have just loved this episode. And I'm even thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to have you on for like a third interview in 6 months from now or something, because there's even more that I know you can share. But this was a really beautiful, just behind the scenes peek into an intentional, conscious journey of motherhood and a spiritual journey of motherhood. So thank you for sharing your story with it. And the first of the 8 questions, what is something simple that brings you a lot of joy?
I mean, right now she's not simple, but I would say Sage, having a daughter and just having a child. It doesn't have to be a daughter, but her as who she is in this lifetime is my daughter. So,
oh, Sage, one day she'll be able to listen to this and understand this conversation.
Totally.
Really beautiful for her. Now, number 2, what is one thing you love about yourself?
Right now, I love my conscious awareness. I love that about myself in general, but that's what's sticking out the most with where I am in this season.
Yeah, which is so authentic to you. Beautiful answer. Number 3, What is a quote or a mantra or affirmation that is speaking to your soul right now and helping you to keep going?
So talk about simplicity. The mantra is I am. And it's just that. I've been talking about this with our friend Erin Panzarella, the newly Miss Erin Mitchell, shout out, about labels and things that we put on ourselves. And I can sit there and say, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a coach, I'm a podcaster, I'm all these things, right? But at the end of the day, those are all just labels. And who I am is I just am. Like I am. And it's that simple. So I believe would be correct mantra.
Oh, so beautiful. Now, the next two, unmasked and open hearted. Number 4, unmasked. What is a mask that you're actively taking off right now? And what does that look like?
Oof. Do you have time for another hour-long conversation?
I know, that's a big one.
Yeah, no. I love these questions. I think the mask I'm taking off right now is the pressure to please everyone else outside myself. I've been slowly taking that mask off over the last several years, but I mean, it's like it is ripped off, or I am fully ripping it off. No doubt about it right now. And what does that look like? It really comes back to just tuning into me and connecting to myself and really honoring that deep, deep, deep connection with myself. And to anyone listening who might be like, okay, well, how the hell do you do that? Right? Come back to your toolbox and use those daily practices that I mentioned, whether it's like meditation, journaling, gratitude, moving your body. Those simple practices actually do build and deepen that connection with yourself over time. Just don't expect it to happen by the next morning when you wake up. It's going to take time, but anything good takes time.
Yes. Oh, so beautiful and powerful too, to speak to that topic as a woman too. Number 5, open hearted. What helps you open up your heart? You shared some things, but what do you want to share about opening up your heart?
Yeah. I mean, from a physical, like an actual, like something, I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. Cacao. Cacao is a huge heart opener. And being able to utilize something that I can put into my body on a daily basis to help open my heart that way. I feel like I've spoken a lot about like mindset and, the energetics and emotions and all those things, but like cacao is simple and cacao really does, like, I do feel a direct difference in where I am. Now, I consume cacao earlier in the day compared to later in the day because that's what works for me, but I do feel an immediate just heart opening connection. There's no other way to say it. And raw cacao too. Finding a really strong grade of cacao. Don't like buy cacao from CVS or something like that. Not going to get the benefits.
That's a really good point. That's a very, very good point. I think Ashley Love, another one of our friends, mentioned cacao for her. And she was talking to me about it because, I'm very, very sensitive to cacao. And she was saying to me, Shannon, I think it's also has to do with what kind of cacao you're consuming. So thank you for mentioning that too, for people who are new to it and want to find a good source.
Yeah.
Couple more questions. Who is a woman that inspires you and why?
Ooh. I would say myself.
Oh.
And which is a little weird to say, but it's very truthful right now. And I'm actually inspiring myself because of how open I am right now and how much I'm doing to really take care of myself and nourish myself and move through what is a very beautiful time and is yet a very challenging time. And I have times where I do beat myself up, but if I'm giving myself a lot of grace, I'm doing a really, really great job. Like a phenomenal job. And me this time last year in March of 2022 would be fucking pumped at how I am navigating this time in my life.
Oh yeah. And you're such an inspiration for all of us too. All of your friends that haven't become mothers yet. You're doing such a good job. We're all like, okay, good. Britt's doing a really good job with this. She's gonna be able to help us out. So
And I say
love
that too, not from an egoic place. Like that's from a
Yeah.
very soul-centered and truthful place.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
well.
I can feel that for sure. If you could go back and give your younger self some word of wisdom right now, what would you want to say to her?
Take your time. Do not rush things. Take your time. You have a whole lifetime ahead of you. And spend time with yourself and do the things that you want to do right now. Do the things you want to do right now. Because and I learned this a little bit upon becoming married. I've learned it even more so now as a mother. But being only responsible for you and just you, and being 1000% independent, like the most independent you will ever be in your life, is a time to be savored and a time to be experienced and enjoy the richness of life. There's so many different rich moments of life, right? Every one is completely different as they come. However, that truly independent time is so special. And it's like, you don't really understand it until it's gone. And I'm so thankful that I really did live every moment and do all the things. And I really listened to my heart and I followed my heart during those times, because now, again, that's why I can really be here now with where I am as a mother, because I feel like I really lived out that independent time. And the money will always come back. All the things will always come back. The time will never come back.
That's really great advice for me too, right now, actually. I needed to hear that.
Aww.
Okay, final question. What are the 2 additional songs you are going to add to our Spotify playlist right now?
Yes. So first song, these are 2 of Sage's favorite songs as well, because she's super into music and I love it. Super aware, I should say, and like attuned to music. Lakshmi by Sam Garrett, I Choose to Live in Love, is a huge one. And there's some, I think, what is it, Molly Mendoza who sings it with him?
Yes.
Yeah. If that's not already on there. And then Stony Creek by Xavier Rudd. Just like the beat. And if you've never watched the music video for that, it's on YouTube. It's this girl in a red dress. I think she's in a red dress, longboarding, skateboarding through the hills. It's beautiful. But those 2 songs for sure.
You know what's so beautiful is I told you this actually yesterday. I cleansed my whole space and I listened to that playlist of Sage's on your Spotify. And so I just recently listened to both of these songs and I love both of them, but I really love that Stony song. I really love it.
It's so pretty.
It is.
I wish that he didn't drop the F word at the beginning of it. Cause like, at what point, right, should like my child stop listening to that song? But for now, it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, yay. Okay, Britt, I know you have to run and go tend to Sage now, but thank you so much. I'm so excited about this episode and that this is going to be out in the world and you sharing your story and your wisdom. It's going to help so many mothers to be and mothers and fathers to be and individuals out there.
I hope you enjoyed this loving your own soul conversation and are now feeling an internal sense of inspiration and expansion. I encourage you to go take action on one simple thing that will not only better yourself, but also the world around you today. I'd love for you to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at @Britt, and I cannot wait to see you embody the highest expression of your own true potential. Now, one last thing before you go. Please don't forget to check out the show notes for special discounts on some of my favorite and well-trusted products that will serve you well in all areas of your life. And if you want to continue learning and connecting together, be sure to check out my website, thebrittolson.com. Plus, if you feel called, I'd love for you to rate and review the show, whether on Apple Podcasts or by sending me a DM on Instagram to let me know your thoughts. Once again, you can reach me at @BrittOlson on Instagram, and exchange for your feedback or review, I'd love to send you my free ebook to making simple, modern smoothies that your mind and body will love. Plus, I will also include a special energy healing meditation. All you have to do is simply leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and screenshot it to send to me, and or directly message me your feedback at the Britt Olson on Insta. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for you, and I hope you have a beautiful day.